This is a 2020 KLX300R. I'm out here in Pinal Air Park, Arizona. You can see the abandoned airstrip with all the old planes in the distance. I'm just doing a few test drives of this bike around here. Overall, I like the bike. I like the fuel injection. I like the electric start and the low fuel light. It's a little bit of a heavy bike. It's 280 pounds roughly. The only issue I've had with this bike actually was I broke a spoke in the rear wheel. It came loose and kind of ripped out, so I had to tighten the spoke nipple and then buy a new spoke. And also the right fork seal started leaking on me, but it actually was just dirt. It was probably mud from when I was riding, so I just cleaned it out, and after that it stopped leaking. I did beef up the front suspension. I put 15 weight fork oil. It made the front a little stiffer, and I turned the clickers in, one click from fully in, because this bike is known to have a kind of imbalance between the front and rear. So the back suspension is set up for about a 180 pound rider. The front is maybe for like a teenager. So that kind of creates this kind of pogo effect. So by stiffening the front a little bit and then having the back kind of neutral on the rebound and on the preload adjustment, it makes the bike a lot more rideable. It's still soft compared to a motocross bike, but compared to like a dual sport, it's much, much stiffer. I mean, you can still get, 1 or 2 feet of air, no issue, but I'm not going to jump, a triple at a motocross track, but you can, for sure take this around a veteran track and have a good time. It's got a lot of low end torque. It's very usable. It doesn't really make top end power like say a 450 would, but compared to like a 250, race bike, the top end power is a little behind, but not much. But the low and mid-range torque on this is much better than like a race bike. I mean, you can lug up a hill in second gear and this thing just pulls like nothing. It's really hard to kill it. It's got a really good clutch feel, and it's got, it's got a wide ratio 6-speed. So you can use, for trail riding, first through fourth is kind of the sweet spot. Fifth and sixth gear are really just if you're on like a fire road, just going wide open. But for trail riding, second and third are kind of the bread and butter. First gear is kind of like a tractor. I mean, this thing will climb up anything as long as you keep the weight forward so you don't loop it. Overall, I'm very happy with the bike. It's a little dated. The frame is kind of, cheap looking. It's mostly steel. It's not a nice aluminum frame like you see on like a YZ250F or 250R, whatever. It's not a race bike, but it's got a nice looking swing arm. The front end, you can only adjust the dampening. You can't adjust the clickers on the top like a lot of bikes. So you can only adjust the dampening, not the compression, which is kind of a weak spot. In the back, you have, a regular clicker style suspension. So it's actually pretty nice. I like the rear shock. I think the front shock being soft is the biggest fault. It does have dual radiators, just like a race bike. It's the same radiator as a 450 Kawasaki. So this bike has no issue overheating. It's a lower compression, 11:1. It's not, race bike compression. You can run this on 87 octane. But the engine, this is 100 degrees right now. I'm out in the desert just putting around, and this thing is, not that warm. It's actually surprising. A race bike, if you idle around a lot, you can easily boil the coolant. So this thing is a nice trail bike. If you want to do aggressive trail riding, enduro type stuff, maybe a hare scramble, this is the perfect bike. If you're planning to jump and be competitive in motocross, this is not the bike. As far as things I've done to it, the only real thing I've done is I removed the emission equipment. So this was actually a California spec'd bike. So it had a bunch of, it had a big box hanging off the back here. It looked like a little tail bag. I took that off and then I capped the line. And then I vented the fuel breather, just in the middle of the fork tube like normal. But from the factory, this actually vented into a vapor canister. So I just plugged it off. I thought that was ridiculous. That was like 2 pounds of weight, just of random garbage. I've changed the oil. And then the other thing I've done is I put hand guards. These are just cheap Chinese hand guards. They're about 35 bucks shipped to your door. To give you a little protection. I like them. The only thing I'll caution you about is if you use the stock bars, which I have here, to put the hand guards in, you have to drill out the handlebar weight. This has actually got a weight inside the handlebar. You have to drill it out, which is really hard. So my best advice is if you do plan to put wraparound hand guards, just buy an aftermarket set of bars and don't spend an hour with a drill bit, you know, throwing metal shavings everywhere trying to get it out. I did it on this bike, but it took me forever. Otherwise, this is a great bike. I mean, it looks good. The fuel injection, you know, it starts up right away. You know, there's no putting around with it. It's just a good bike. You know, it's got a little ignition light there when you start it up. And that's pretty much it. It's a good bike. Thank you.